Hello and good evening. Excuse me. Welcome to the Thursday night version of Student Loan Justice live stream. I'm Ed McKinley and I'm from Massachusetts. Many of you may have seen some of my broadcasts and live streams in the past. Often I choose to start out with some sort of odd or entertaining musical or other sort of introduction. But tonight, I'd like to kind of stay on a little bit more somber note than usual. And I'm going to make this the briefest live stream of all of my live streams, which some people might be happy to hear. But before I start, to set the tone for that somber note, I'd just like you to listen to a very brief recording. Okay? Thank you. This is brief. I think you'll like it. There. That sound is the exact sound I expect to hear as the entire student loan system continues its wild, bizarre, and fiery crash into a massive brick wall. There is no other reasonable expectation of any better outcome than that. And I don't think we have ever been closer to that abrupt, perhaps ugly, but somehow satisfying ending to a nightmare that has spanned literally decades. It's almost inconceivable when I think about it that Alan Collins began this movement and studentloanjustice.org nearly 15 years ago. I kind of got involved in it really shortly after that, and there's been a lot of people who have put in a hand towards making this group relevant, towards keeping our argument and our cause in front of enough people that it has gone from something that was considered sort of a fringe idea by a bunch of irresponsible youngsters who chose to go to school and major in subjects that no one cared about and spend their student loan money on pizza and beer and Netflix or whatever. I know that has never been the truth. And you know what? I gotta tell you something. Even if that is the truth, even if you borrowed this money and you showed up on campus in a Maserati that you had made a down payment with from the student loan money, you pulled into the school sideways with a horn blasting Metallica and just let out a rebel yell, got out of the car, went into the classroom, wasted, and just did that every day, pretty much until you ran out of money or you got thrown out of school or went to prison for defrauding people on stocks and bonds or whatever it was that happened to you. Not that I would say that those are qualities that should qualify you for some sort of good citizen award, but I still believe that even if you are one of those mythical characters, and maybe some do exist, but I'll tell you what, they're much further and fewer between than our oppressors would like people to believe. But even if you are, I have got to insist that you not be treated any differently than the businessman who ran up over $100,000 in expenses, wining and dining clients, taking lavish cruises, trips, and losses at casinos, and went to uh, bankruptcy court and relieved himself of all that debt and probably a bunch of other debt that he had. Because bankruptcy protections are not about winning the lottery, folks. It's not an award. It's not a present, and it's not a privilege. It's a right. And if you read the Constitution and understand through through simple interpretation and do a little other research, which we have done, and understand that the very precept to the inception of the revolution, the American Revolution, and our independence really was predicated upon the fact that forefathers like John Quincy Adams, and or was it just John Adams? I think then, I don't know. But it was a guy named John, and there was a guy named Adams, and Thomas Jefferson, John Hancock, whoever. I could probably name a few more. Uh, I could probably name more members of the original Congress than I can members of, I don't know, the Beatles. No, it's not true either, but you get my point. Of the 1992 Cincinnati Reds. Folks, I say this a lot, and I say this a lot when I do live streams, and I'm going to bring it up very briefly because I do need to end this more briefly than normal. We've got to start talking to other people about what's going on here. Once you've come to this group and become informed and educated about the reality of your student loans, the loans that never get paid no matter how much whether you pay them or you don't, the balance never goes away. In most cases, it never goes down. If that's not a predatory loan, then I have no idea or concept. And, Alan pointed out on the board, bankruptcy is no picnic whatsoever. The last thing most people want to do is file bankruptcy. And I think to some degree, the mythical idea of the gaffer out there who lives a lavish lifestyle by simply running up debt and abusing the bankruptcy courts may be very similar to the urban myths that were used against all of us to relieve us of constitutional right of bankruptcy protection. That bogus idea that all somebody had to do was get enough people in Congress to buy into it, whether it was true or not, just didn't matter. It's not about the truth too often anymore. It's just about whether or not people believe it. And it's like, George Costanza from Seinfeld once said, it's not a lie if you believe it. Well, yes, it is. It's still a lie. So, I've lost my train of thought, but worse things have happened to me before. So even, that whole idea that this is some sort, look, there may be some people who have somehow abused the bankruptcy system. There may have been some people who somehow abused the student lending system. But the simple fact of the matter is that every one of these systems has a margin for error built into the math to allow for what will be a minimal amount of malfeasance. Because as a human race, we simply have not yet figured out how to make a perfect system out of anything. So we have to be just slightly flexible, folks. When the research was done after the damage was already done in the legislature, and we really looked at the facts, the Government Accounting Office basically came back and said, you know what? The reality of bankruptcy and student loans, when they were bankruptable in bankruptcy court, is that less than 1% had ever filed. That was the truth. And so, it's really important for you guys to wrap your minds around and own the role that you really play in this, which is not somebody who came along irresponsibly borrowing, recklessly borrowing money, and walking around spending it all on bubble gum and trading cards. But even if you did, you still deserve the same rights, without any exception, as the whether he's mythical or an actual character, the businessman who runs up enormous consumer credit debt, and when the weight becomes too heavy, simply disperses it in bankruptcy court. I probably shouldn't even put it that way myself, because the bottom line is this. There's a reason why we allow even that mythical businessman to do that, if he in fact exists. And that is to put just as much of wiggle room in consumer credit laws to prevent the lenders, the people who hold the money and the power, from exploiting the borrowers. We are one of the greatest case studies you could ever see, because if anyone ever said, hey, so just for the laughs, let's pick one segment of consumer debt and make an exception to bankruptcy and other important protections, and let's just see what happens. What could possibly go wrong? But this was no experiment, and this was no accident. Now, what I do know is that there are far, far, far too many people out there who have both legs caught in this trap. Many who still haven't come to the full realization of the fact that the truck hit them. They did not hit the truck. You guys know that out there. You guys have been around, most of you who have been around, most of you who listen to the live streams with Alan, read some of the, or read or watch a lot of the media that we've done, and studied this problem. Know that this was not a bad borrower problem. This was a well-planned and executed predatory and corrupt lending system unlike anything we've seen before. Now, I don't know if any of you have been watching the Democratic National Convention over the last few evenings. I've watched probably 65-70% of it. Time constraints. Busy guy. I haven't heard a lot about student loan. I haven't heard anyone say anything about predatory student loan debt. Folks, that makes me a little bit nervous. As many of you may realize, we had a lot more voice in the Democratic primary with some candidates who, of course, are no longer on the ticket, who were more vocal about the idea of canceling student loan debt, who are more vocal about the idea of returning bankruptcy protections to student loan debt. And I'm not hearing that at the DNC, and there's only one reason. And I think that we have to take the responsibility. I don't think we can afford to sit back and expect Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Kamala Harris or Mike Pence or anyone else to take responsibility for our problem, because I don't believe that without a very good reason that they will. So what's the good reason? How about 50 million plus people with their name on the line that have been sucked into this deal? At least 30% of them, on average, over the last 10 to 15 years, in default status, and probably at least 60% if you include them in. I think it's more than that, to be honest with you. Behind or in distress. And according to A. Wayne Johnson, the gentleman up to about 8 or 9 months ago who was in charge of the entire program, at least 80% of current borrowers will never be able to retire their debt. So we got to come out from under our desks. We got to come out from behind closets or whatever it is, wherever we've all been hiding. And if you're here now and you know what's going on here, then you need to become one of the liberators. Because not to share this with the people that, like I always say, If you saw a crowd of 25 people standing around, as long as they were all distanced and wearing masks, and you threw a rock, there's a strong chance that you will at random hit someone who is suffering with predatory student loan debt. There's a lot of us. And, uh, we don't have the resources. We're not a corporately funded AstroTurf, BS organization. This is actual grassroots. This is what it's like. We are dependent upon sometimes a little bit of generosity, but much more so the time, efforts, and concern of our members. And our primary need at this time is to grow this group and to increase the activity of the members that are here. So to get me out of here, I could go on. I mean, I know I'd be repeating myself quite a lot, but quite frankly, I needed to hear a lot of this stuff over and over again myself at one time to really understand the truth and reality of it, and to be able to feel confident and feel strong going toe to toe with some of our elected officials or their staff or policymakers. That this is how I learned to do that, and so I hope that you all will have that same experience. At any rate, the petition needs our help. We have got to increase the number of signatures. Those of you who have really stepped up on this, thank you. I hope you'll continue. I hope you'll go back and recover some of the ground that you covered in the past, because some of it was quite fertile. We have a lot of signatures, but we got a lot more to go. We're not beating a dead horse here. There are many, many strong reasons. It's logistical reasons for us doing this. The other thing I talked about Tuesday night, I want to throw in a reminder. A. Wayne Johnson, candidate for United States Senate, Georgia, former head of the Federal Student Lending Program. The man who essentially said, and I know this is a little bit of paraphrasing, but the intent and the tone was every bit as strong as this. This system, said A. Wayne Johnson, is completely fucked. He went on to add something to the effect of his expected necessity that this debt will need to be canceled. Simple as that. I mean, you've got that in your pocket. That's like, no matter who you're talking to, all they've got is a squirt gun and you have a cannon. When they start with the BS about, oh, you signed, you borrowed the money, you should have known this, why should I pay for your education, boobity blah, 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 you tell them. The guy that Donald Trump and Nancy DeVos appointed to run the entire program was so fucking horrified after 7 or 8 or 9 months of staring at the heaping, steaming pile of shit called student loan debt, that he not only quit and walked off his position and resigned, but he's now running for United States Senate with a prominent platform to cancel student loan debt and put this current lending system to bed permanently. You need to use that. That's all you need to use. In fact, if that's all that you know, if that's all you have to respond to the naysayers, and by the way, you don't really have to respond to any naysayers for the most part. Use your judgment. Most people are just full of shit. And pardon all of my French, but this is how I feel about it. So I can barely make it under the 20-minute mark unless I begin to sign out now. Please work the petition. Please talk to others. Please talk to anyone you know who is, if you're from Georgia, you know someone in Georgia, or if you know someone named Georgia, let them know A. Wayne Johnson is a candidate for senator in the state of Georgia who believes that this system needs to be shut down and the debt eliminated. I'm Ed McKinley in Massachusetts. Thanks everybody for listening tonight. and those of you who catch the reruns later in tape. I'm from Massachusetts, studentloanjustice.org. Good night.